You're listening to Copy Chief Radio. Get all the episodes and join the community at copychief.com.
Hey, what's up? Welcome. It's Kev, and I'm here today with my buddy, Jason Van Orden. He's a business consultant to coaches, and, he's a strategist. If you are a coach or someone doing primarily high-ticket business, Jason is the kind of guy who can help you obviously market better, sell better, produce better. And we were introduced, I think, by Laura Belgray. Excited to get to know you better and explore what you do, Jason.
Yeah, awesome. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks, Kevin.
So let's start with the question that comes up a lot for people when they're promoting an offer, right? It's like the hardest thing we do in some ways because there's so much guessing involved, right? You have to guess on price. You have to guess on positioning. You hope you're reaching the right audience, especially if you're running any cold traffic. So if somebody's just finished a promotion for an offer and it didn't go as they hoped, and they came to you for feedback, what are the first things you would look at to assess what they could change and see better results?
Yeah, this is a great question. I work with lots of coaches to help develop new programs, new offers, and then I have ones come to me when their offers don't do as well. And so there are three things that I normally look at when somebody says, "Hey, Jason, I've got this offer, not selling as well as I'd like. What do you think is missing?" And one of the first things, which might just seem so obvious, is making sure that they're really clear about who the ideal client was for the offer. Especially when a coach or client who's used to doing one-on-one work maybe transitions into something that's a group offer, something a little bit more scalable, they're going to from a place where they can be a little bit more nuanced and customized in their messaging because they're probably talking to the person online to sell them. And then also when they're delivering value, they are able to kind of adjust to the person in the room. But when you are selling something a little bit more at scale, you got to be more precise with who you're talking to. This is something I know you've talked about many times. There comes up on the show. It's just, standard copywriting, but being not only like at the level of, so often we hear about your avatar, who's your ideal person and demographics, which can be helpful for targeting and stuff. But it's so important to understand the context that they're in right now. Like what is causing them to look for support? What's going on in their life? How are they describing that in the language that they use? So that's one thing is like, who's the person and are you clear on that? Once we've established that and done any adjusting there, and it's like, okay, well, did you reach enough of these people, And so either sometimes they're assuming that they've got plenty of those people on their list, and then we dig into that and find out actually the list isn't as targeted as they hoped, or, whatever channels or messaging they're using are, and those are two different things to look at, the messaging and the channels. So it's like, what is that top of funnel front end messaging you're using? Is it speaking to the top of mind things that would actually gain their attention? Because we're in an attention economy. It's one of the most valuable resources we can get our hands on as a resource is people's attention. And they've got a built-in spam filter in their brain that's just going to swat that stuff away and go, yeah, not for me, been there, done that, or just not even recognize there's a connection between what you're saying and what they're dealing with. And so if that messaging is not right on the front end, so I look at that. And then the third thing we'd look at is what channels are you using? You're actually getting in front of that messaging in front of the right people or enough of the right people through the channels that you're putting out there. So that's kind of a quick 3-point audit. Who's the right person? Are you getting in front enough of them in terms of the right messaging, gaining their attention and the channels that you're trying to reach them with?
And of those three, which would you say is the more challenging to fix?
Probably the most challenging for people to fix is that right messaging up front. And the reason for it is the more expert we get at what we do, and research shows this, the more we actually disconnect from being able to put ourselves back in the place of the people that we are trying to reach. And then that just shifts over time. Markets shift, needs shift. What even we think we're looking for can shift. So it's something that needs to be continually checked back in with. And it's so easy to make assumptions about here's what I need to say, here's what's going to gain their attention. And to miss the mark. So I'd say it's that front end, top of funnel messaging.
Interesting. Yeah, I would agree. Especially, like you said, the need to not make it look like everything else and get past that, your brain's spam filter. I love that concept. That's exactly what it is. I always tell people, like, even with email, which I think is the most intimate form of marketing communication, think about how you check your email. Like, I think we all do the same thing. first objective is what can I delete immediately so I can shrink this list,
and
right?
and our brain is doing the exact same thing. What can I ignore is what our brain is asking without us even being conscious of it. So that's a great analogy.
Yeah. Yeah. Really interesting. I think that the number two thing that's so valuable is dialogue, right? If you can get attention, now can you have a conversation, actually listen to what people's objections might, like, for instance, we just had a sale, and after the sale, we sent out a "why didn't you buy" email. And I think I got like 8 pages of people explaining. Like you said, you can look at it like data, and that's useful. It's like, okay, 85%, they just couldn't afford it. But what else are they saying? I really wanted it because why, right? And look through there for what are they really telling you? What emotions are they having? What kind of language are they using? Is it thought? Is it feel? Right? What is it?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I hear you saying there is it was something I talk about a lot. I think one of the most powerful marketing superpowers is empathy, and having that ability to put yourself in the position of the people you're trying to reach and talk to them and listen, and then go several layers deep into what they're saying to really reach the core motivations, the core objections, and the core, desires that they're trying to get to.
So what kind of frameworks do you use to help people find the holes in their messaging? Because again, especially top of funnel, man, it's hard to choose. We all feel like our product or our coaching or whatever does so much. How do we only say these few things about it to really get the most qualified people paying attention?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a modified version of your listeners might be familiar with something called the customer awareness spectrum, which talks about these different levels of awareness somebody goes through. And I kind of use a modified version of that as a lens to look at messaging through, to see like, okay, here are the things that somebody needs to understand, believe about your offer, about you, about themselves, in order to be ready to say yes. And so I've got 5 points on that framework that we look at to see like where there might be a gap. Because if we can identify the gap, obviously we can fill it. So the 5 pieces start with number 1, pain awareness, right? And this is like one of my favorite quotes is Robert Collier's, always enter the conversation already going on in the mind of your prospect or your customer, right? And so we got to meet them where they're at. And where they're at right now might not be, they might not have any awareness of your solution, or maybe they've had a cursory encounter with it. They probably misunderstand things about it. We have to assume that the connection between what you offer, what you do, and where they're at is not clear, and we need to make it clear. And so often we come out of the gate talking about our solution. I mean, we believe in it. We're like, hey, this is the best thing. This is what's going to get you there. But they don't understand that yet. And so that very first thing I look at is, what are you saying on the front end in your lead magnet? In fact, here's just not to confuse things, but another easy framework is just to look at things in 3 phases in terms of a customer journey. You got to gain their attention, earn their trust, and then inspire them to buy. Okay, so in that first phase, it's gain their attention. And so what are you saying, again, to gain their attention? And that's that pain aware stage. So what are they saying and thinking and complaining about when they're sleeping, when they wake up, when they go to bed, with their coworkers, with their spouse, their partner, whoever, in the terms that they are thinking about the what's going on for them? So it's like, look, like if you've got, obviously if you wake up with a toothache, you're going to like start looking into like, okay, how do I solve this toothache? What's causing the toothache? You wake up with a rash on your skin or whatever, like what is causing this thing? So it's like, okay, well, going back to that context of where they're at right now, is it that, they're dealing with anxiety on a daily basis that's getting in the way of them being productive and feeling confident in their life and taking the steps that they want to get to where they want to go? Is it that they're dealing with back pain all the time and it's keeping them from running around with their kids and playing sports with their kids or whatever? Is it that they embarrass themselves on the golf course because when they go and they hit from the tee, it's a slice off to the side every time or whatever? Like, we got to understand, again, that context. So that's the first thing to look at, is that pain awareness. What's the symptom, as they would describe it? Then the second thing is what I call the problem awareness. So here's where it's like, and this is where it's a really powerful opportunity to break. So it's like you've got their attention for that moment with the pain awareness. They're leaning in and going like, well, that sounds like me. This sounds relevant to, it's getting through the spam filter. I'm not going to ignore it. But now you have an opportunity to frame the problem for them. And if you can help them understand the problem better than they can, like you're already winning. Your credibility is starting to be in place. So let's go back to that anxiety example, right? Especially if, let's say you're somebody who helps people with their daily anxiety, but you know that it's like you've got this solution, especially for people who either don't like therapy or have gone to therapy and it's still just not getting them where they want to go. And so that's what your messaging says, like, hey, have you been going to talk therapy for a while to deal with your anxiety and it's still not helping you how you'd like? So you got their attention with that. And then you start reframing and maybe teaching them something different that they've never heard about how their anxiety works. And what you're trying to do here is give them new hope. Give them new possibility, excuse them of their past failures, right? It's like they've probably tried a lot of things or thought about a lot of things, didn't go well, and now their own confidence in themselves and the ability to figure out is eroded. And so they're very quickly going to think like, I don't know if I could do that. Maybe not. I don't know, been there, done that, or this sounds like things I've tried and I don't know if I can do it. But if you can come in with a different way of looking at the problem, something that's maybe counter even to some of the conventional wisdom, this is what I call a remarkability factor. So they're like, whoa, very quick example here is I have ADHD. I have a hard time managing my schedule sometimes. And for a long time, I'm always looking for new ways to prioritize my schedule, get the most important things done every day. And my ADHD gets in the way of that. And I've tried all the time apps. I've taken coaching. I've done a lot of things when it comes to my ADHD. So a lot of things that pop up on my feed, I'm like, ADHD, got it. And then one pops up on my feed the other day where it's like, AI versus ADHD. So I'm like, okay, that's interesting. And they're like, use AI to manage your schedule for you and get your highest priorities done. And immediately it's like, now that's not something I've heard before. Tell me more about that. Like that's a different way. And, then they go on to explaining what that means. But now they got my attention with the pain point. Then they introduced a new way of looking at the problem. And that's that second stage is that problem awareness. Frame the problem for them in a new way than they've likely heard before.
That's great. I love that. And then there's three more. I don't know if you want to go through all these, but they're really
we can go really quickly through them. Solution, and then you can get into your solution. You go like, hey, I've reframed the problem for you. It's like, no wonder you've struggled with this. You didn't know this key piece over here. And I'm here to give it to you, like this hard-earned secret that I've gone through the desert and found, and I'm here to bring it to you. And now you can say, let me lay the roadmap out for you. And hopefully you've got a really good way of concisely saying, these are the 5 pillars. These are the 3 steps. Here's the diagram that shows you the way. So now they can grasp quickly. It's like, okay, you can solve my pain. This is a new way of looking at it. And here's the way forward. The 4th thing is what I call you awareness. So now it's about helping them see that you are the one to help them with this particular solution. Don't go watching videos to try to do it on your own or read books or hire a different coach. It's you. And the key here is being what I call resonant. We talk about relevance already with that pain awareness. It's resonance. Are you communicating in values that vibe with them? Is there something about the way you show up and make them feel or think that they're like, this is the person I've been waiting for. This is like really who I think can finally help. And, it goes into credibility, but it goes into likability. Right. And that's another thing that research shows us is that trust is made up of credibility and likability. And too often we lean too much into credibility. I've got all these years of experience and I've done this and I've done that, which is important, but we got to make sure that they connect with us in a personal way. And then the last piece is now awareness. And that's like, okay, why should they take action now? And our default approach usually to this is like, use the scarcity, use the urgency, and not that there's anything wrong with them, but they're used, I think, in the right way. But even more powerfully is in this very like consultative way to say, here's the cost of not moving forward. Like they're looking at the cost of buying in and investing time, money, and energy in your solution. You need to help them see it's like, no, you can't afford not to do this. Let me show you what you're missing out on, what you'll gain in terms of time, money, savings of time, money, savings of stress, saving, earnings and recognition, whatever that currency is that's most important to them. Because if they can see it's like, okay, if I don't do this 6 months from now, I'm likely going to be worse off than I am now. And I'm losing out on a lot by not saying yes and moving forward with this. So just like sometimes you just got to spell the math out for them or just say, this is, make it clear to them, this is what you're missing out on by not moving forward. So to quickly review, pain, problem, solution, you awareness, and then now awareness. And those are 5 things I look for when assessing messaging to make sure we didn't miss any of those elements
really
as we were
good.
going through.
I like this a lot. It's not brand new, but nothing's brand new. But this is a really great thing to say before I'm thinking as a copywriter here, before I sit down to write an ad, right, do I have all these nailed in? And are they congruent? Am I telling the same story to the same person throughout all of these, right? I can see, I was talking through them. I'm thinking about something I'm writing right now. And I'm like, the you aware, like, would that be congruent if I didn't have this chart in front of me filled out and decided, right? It'd be easy to go off the rails at certain parts. You see that a lot where it starts out, oh, you got the first 3, and then what the heck happened? It's just,
right. Yeah, absolutely. Totally. In fact, a lot of times, there's almost always one of these 5 missing, and it's natural to happen, especially if you're not used to creating copy and promotions and messaging and story and stuff like that. But yeah, for sure. Any one of these 5 is easy to overlook. And by plugging that hole, it can make a huge difference in someone finally getting it and going like, oh, I need to do this. And I need to do it sooner rather than later.
So how's your freelance business doing? Not really, I want to know. Because did you know there are 7 phases of a freelancing career? It's true, I know this because I created the phases. But not just for fun or, to have a hook. It's because I've lived all of these phases and I've now coached hundreds of freelancers through all 7 of these phases. They're real. So let's find out which phase you're in right now. And if you agree, I'll send you the short list of things you want to do right now to reach the next phase where life gets much better. If you're feeling stuck, let's unstuck your freelancing. Copychief.com/phases. Take the quick assessment, get your result, and get moving forward. Copychief.com/phases. I'll see you there. I'm thinking about that again as a copywriter as one message. Obviously, you have different parts and different ways people are going to experience your message. For instance, however they're on your list, now you want to get an email to get them to the sales page and hear your whole sort of sales argument. What do you find, for instance, are parts of these more important or effective to use in email than others?
I even use this as a structure for writing emails, and not necessarily they have to go in that order, but whether if I am helping a client design a workshop or a webinar, we're trying to incorporate all 5 of these in there if we can. If we're doing an email series, then we're going to try to get all 5 of these in there. So that first email is going to be empathize with the pain and show them the possibility of something new. And it's like, look, I get it. Here's where you're at, and I'm here to show you something new. And then the second email might be, yeah, no wonder it's been so tough. What you didn't realize is that there's this other thing over here. Like when it comes to having a conflict-free divorce, a lot of people don't realize that the key is this. And I'm bringing up this example because I have a divorce lawyer as a client right now, right? And so like she frames it in this different way of like, look, a lot of people think it's just necessarily going to end up being this conflict-ridden thing. What if you start with this direction over here and plan these things ahead? The likelihood of your outcome is going to be much better, and then the next email might be like, okay, now I've talked about the pain and the problem here. Let me share the roadmap with you. And so that's where you say like the 5 steps, the 3 parts. And that's the perfect email at the end to like position, like to shift the conversation and start saying, and I've got a program for you. I've got an offer. It's like, look, I've talked about these things. Now let's start talking about how you can actually work with me. And then you might get into the you awareness and the now awareness from there. Now, the email sequence is probably going to be more than 5 emails, but you can touch on each of those throughout that sequence.
This might be off track for where you focus, but something I've been thinking about lately, because we can't assume anybody's going to read every email or in order. Do you know any good ways to help them go back a message or two if that's where they're picking up?
Yeah, that's always the challenge, isn't it? I mean, I will say that with high ticket offers, Usually somewhere you're going to end up on the phone with somebody. Now, the hope is that you're only ending up on the phone with those who are really relatively serious about considering. So you're not wasting your time or theirs, right? And so I will say that I often use that as the catch-all by asking questions to figure out like, okay, where might they not be, where might the objections still be, or the things they might not be understanding. Now, that said, another thing that I've done is later on in the email series, either referring back to the previous emails and linking back to them,
right.
On a blog or something like that, or the videos or whatever it might be. Sometimes along the lines, then I might like say, hey, here's a PDF summing up what if you haven't caught everything so far, here's a PDF summing up what we've talked about, or a quick 5-minute video that sums up what we've been talking about. And just not being afraid to repeat yourself, because I think people shy away from that, even in a given promotion, thinking, "Oh, I talked about that in my last promotion." It's like, yeah, well, they might have forgotten that stuff or not seen some of it already. It's been a little while. So in general, just being not afraid to repeat stuff, but then repeat it in different formats and different places and times in order to give the greatest chance. And in the end, like the sales page or the phone call can hopefully be the catch-all.
Yep.
And often the sales page does repeat like these 5 things. 100%. You'll find them on my sales pages.
In fact, something I experimented with recently that I hadn't done before was using sections unedited from the sales letter as emails.
Yeah, totally.
Which
is why it makes sense sometimes to write the sales page first, right? Because I tell my clients often do that. Go write the sales page, and then the whole offer is going to be clear to you, and we'll have everything we need to build the promotional sequence.
Yeah, because I think before my instinct would have been, oh, I can't just they're going to feel cheated. First of all, you'd be lucky if someone is paying that close attention to even notice that it's word for word. I mean, I literally kept the formatting in place and everything, Yeah. But I specifically wanted them to either see it again in context and want to now see it in context, kind of start from the top, or why say it a different way in email when I feel like I've said it pretty well on the sales page? You know what I mean? Just that's the one way to guarantee that you're being congruent potentially to a fault. And I just I had like an addendum to the Collier thing. Enter the conversation that's going on in your prospect's mind, but from the same place every time, right? Mm-hmm. We were talking about if they come in later in the sequence or something. Especially if the goal is consistent every time, it's like get somebody on a call. That makes it almost a little easier in a sense, but not really, because you can have a sales page. It's kind of the same thing. But I think it'd be easy to go, okay, well, now I'm going to enter this different person's conversation or enter a different conversation they're having in their head. And that makes it really hard to tell if your messaging was effective or not, because you're kind of all over the place.
Right. Well, then that brings up a really good point, because even at the top of funnel messaging, when you're trying to be pain aware, they might be completely aware of your type of solution. I mean, look, like I help coaches and consultants who want to go beyond one-to-one services to create group programs and courses. And a lot of coaches know that group programs and courses are out there as a scalability thing, right? So it's not like I need to come out and say, usually I'm not like, here are the 10 reasons why you should make an online course, or here. It's more like, okay, if they already are familiar with my solution, why haven't they done it yet? So then the pain is not in having a pain and not seeing the connection to the solution. It's more that, okay, they're afraid of the tech, or they're worried that by going from one-on-one to group, it'll compromise the results that they'll give to their clients. Sometimes they're like, I don't know, like it feels so customized and intuitive what I do in the room. How do I even turn that into a system? Which I still have yet to find one that we can't end up doing that in some way, right? So it's like, okay, well then what are the reasons? If my market knows about my solution, then the pain awareness is about speaking to why they aren't moving forward with that yet and giving them a new way to look at it. So now they can hopefully go, okay, maybe I will take a step forward on this because this is different than I've heard before.
That's really good. Were you a copywriter like in a past life?
I grew up as an entrepreneur and studying lots of copywriters, Dan Kennedy and stuff like that. Okay. And writing my own copy. I've written a lot of my own copy and just written lots of emails for the last 20 years. I don't traditionally have copy. I mean, I look over copy for my clients all the time, but no, I've never been, well, that might not be true, but I'm not traditionally paid as a copywriter now, but have written lots of copy in my time.
Let's say you get this on a deeper level than most strategists. It's really granular. And to me, these are the most important things. They get overlooked, and I'm guilty myself. I've been you get the curse of knowledge, right? Running my same business for 8 years and writing to that audience for 8 years. Last year, I really took a step back and revisited the question, what is it my customer desires most? And can I get that down to a phrase? And then, or can I get it down to 3 to 5 things and have dialogue with them about what they're struggling with? It's so easy to make assumptions, no matter how long you've been doing something.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I've seen really smart people make offer killing assumptions about what they're offering. Totally.
So what are the sort of high leverage things you would advise somebody to take like today if they knew they needed to improve their messaging?
Okay. Yeah. So some people might be wondering, well, hey, Jason, this framework of 5 things sounds great, but how do I know what those things are? What the pain aware language is, what the problems that are holding them back, the myths or misconceptions and so forth. And, we've all heard like, hey, you can do surveys, you can have your email. It's like, what's your greatest challenge when it comes to, but here's what the big startups do who know it's like, look, we can't afford to create something that totally misses the mark because we're burning our funding and we got to get some profit.
We got people to answer to too.
We got people to answer to. And what they do is what's called customer discovery. And that's done by just having conversations with people who are your ideal market, who are feeling the pain that you are wanting to solve, and having very open-ended conversations with them. Being careful not to lead them into, it's not saying like, hey, here's my offer. What do you think? Right. Would this serve you well? It's just, it's asking like, hey, tell me about the last time you tried to X. How did that go? Why is it important for you to solve this? What would it mean for your business? What are some of the biggest frustrations you've run into? So it's like asking all those, and then you kind of have the tea leaves there that you get to read as the expert and go like, okay, I see where the misunderstandings are, where the opportunity is for me to enter the conversation or bring something new. It makes it so much easier to create a winning offer and then create winning messaging and start from a place that's just much farther ahead and saves you from some experimentation and headaches. And so, I tell my clients, go and have 10 of those conversations and you're already going to start seeing some through lines. And then just make it a habit, make it an ongoing habit. And maybe you're at a conference, you're like, great, I've got an opportunity to have lots of 5 to 30 minute conversations with people who, or on a regular basis, give people the opportunity to set up that 20 or 30 minute call with you and ask them these good open-ended questions and then record them, transcribe them, look at the language, categorize them into these things. Here's a pain-aware statement. Here's a solution-aware statement. And then that gives you the stuff to draw from, gives you ideas for emails. It gives you exact phrasing to use on landing pages. So customer discovery is absolutely one of the top things. And I guess what I should have said before that would be, well, find the gap. So use these 5 steps we just talked about and analyze your own messaging and think, okay, am I opening with language that meets them where they're at and doesn't get swatted away by the, can I ignore you spam filter? Am I using a now awareness? Am I using these different things? And then once you see what's missing, that helps you guide your conversations to go like, okay, well, here's where I need better understanding and more complete language to flesh out better messaging. So I'd say analyze using a good framework, whether it's the one we talked about today or someone else's, find the gaps, and then go do customer discovery interviews. And then it's going to start shining a spotlight on what needs to be adjusted.
Yeah. Quick question. I assume your clients are established, and so they have an audience, some way to reach the people they should be having these discussions with. What do you suggest to people who maybe don't have that yet, if they're maybe vetting ideas for a product, those kinds of things?
Don't underestimate your own network, right? And so one thing that I have clients do, I mean, I do work with established coaches and consultants, but sometimes they're successful at that, but they haven't built their email list. And that's one of the things we end up looking at. But, whether they have that email list or just, a network or whatever else to tap into. I mean, coming back to customer discovery interviews, it's pretty easy to send out some emails saying, hey, I'm working on new tools, new content, new stuff to help this type of person accomplish this type of thing. And I just really want to update and refresh my understanding of their goals and what they're dealing with right now. Do you know anybody who fits bullet point, description that I could talk to, or think of who those people are and reach out to them directly? Can I ask you 20 or 30 minutes of your time? Now, the reason why I say start there is not only because the customer discovery is helpful, but sometimes you do 10 or 15 of those customer discovery interviews, there's likely going to be a couple people in there that are going to start saying, okay, yeah, tell me more about this thing that you're making. Or that you can follow up with them again and go, hey, thanks again for your time a couple of weeks ago. Here's what I ended up finding, and just wanted to let you know I'm putting this thing together. If that's something that could interest you, here's a link. We can set up a call to chat about it. So it's like find that way to kind of like stir the pot, and I call it sending out radar, sonar to get radar blips and figure out like who is it that's thinking about these things right now. Another way I do that is offer a really valuable workshop, and I say, look, this is a no pitch, actionable workshop where we're going to do this specific thing and you're going to have it done by the end of that. And I make sure it's like one of those early steps that really tease them up then for my course or the next offer, right? So like I have a 10-week workshop, A to Z, let's launch and fill your first cohort of your course. So I did a workshop recently. It was like, okay, how do you make a winning offer? And for 2 hours, I walked people through that. So by the end, they're like, oh, okay, now I'm starting to see either for an existing or new offer, how I need to formulate that. And I've got a bunch of calls signed up with those people in that workshop to talk about how we can take it further, right? So whether it's on your email list, to your network, on social media, send out the sonar. So invites to customer discovery. I love Dean Jackson's quote, like more cheese, less whiskers, right? And so it's like cheese, it brings the mouse towards you. Whiskers scares it away. And so often we come out with like, hey, that webinar, and it sounds like it's going to be salesy. So they're like, nope, I'm scurrying back into my hole or whatever. But if you can make it like, no, this is about delivering value to you. And if this specific thing speaks to you, I'd love to invite you in to chat about this, work on this or whatever. And then once you've put those blips out on the radar, now you've got a hot list of people to start following up with. So whether it's an email list or a spreadsheet of people that have responded to some kind of invitation, it's a great way to get some traction going on a new offer.
That's great. All right. We talked about what to do. What are one or two things that people are still doing, maybe just out of old habit that they need to move away from because it's just not effective anymore?
I mean, yes, there is something to striking when the iron is hot. So, hey, somebody signs up for our email list. And so that indicates, hey, they might be interested. But so often we just go after all these people like, great, I got to get these people to convert sometime here in the next 2 weeks. And so, it's just kind of this, it ends up being a bit of this churn, and we do even subtle things that kind of like turn them off a bit, or if they're not ready, they kind of like tune out, and then we lose them rather than realizing, and this isn't either or, but rather than realizing it's like, okay, again, how do I send sonar out to the people signing up to my email list to see like how hot are they right now? And then, so it's a bit of segmentation is what's going on there. So realizing that just because somebody's on your email list just signed up, half or more of those still might be a few months or more away from doing business with you. Right. So it's like, okay, so how, that's why we have a nurture sequence and stuff to keep them engaged. But then you regularly got to put those feelers out, and I like to be a lot more conversational about it in the way that I approach it. Yeah. So sometimes it's that workshop offer, and sometimes it can be something straightforward and saying like, hey, I'm looking for 10 people for this thing. I'm going to help X kind of person accomplish this. If this is you, hit reply. But just like, you're continually trying to like pull off kind of the hottest prospects rather than just like hammering the entire list with what it is that you're offering. So I guess, there's a lot, we could go into that for a whole interview right there, but it's realizing that not everybody is ready to buy right now. So create your customer journey in a way that allows people to kind of come at their own pace, but then to tell you when they're ready to make that next step. That's one thing. And then the other one I'd say is kind of on the other end of the spectrum, when somebody is moved up to the point of saying yes or no to the offer. And we're like, well, people are lazy and they're not paying attention. Unless I really like put on some pressure, they're not going to make a decision, right? And yes, there is some to that, but I think we use scarcity and urgency too hard sometimes. And again, it can just really, I think people have gotten a lot wiser to some of the false scarcity and the false urgency, or just like, why are you putting a timer on the page right now when you're asking me to buy this like digital product or whatever? And that's where my preference is to come back to that now awareness I talked about, of like, just help them see why they're missing out by not saying, by not saying yes, why they're, I mean, a very quick example on that, my divorce client, she's a mediator and a lawyer with this great course to help people get through divorce more smoothly. it was actually pretty easy with her. I said, look, your course is only $350, which I want to get her to charge more for that, but that we're working on it. And I said, all you need to say is go through this course. And as long as I save you one billable hour with a lawyer, you've cut even. But chances are I'm going to save you multiple billable hours. So you can continue on your own, draw this out, make mistakes, spend a lot more money on lawyers, or you can take this course. It'll lay things out. You'll be prepared. And when you go and talk to the lawyer, you're going to be $1,000, $2,000 ahead, right? It's like, well, now you've put an ROI in their pocket. Going towards that more than feeling desperate to like, okay, I got to use the timer. I got to use the urgency to get. A lot of people are starting to see through that, in my opinion.
No, it's true. And, another interesting thing is all those little tools and tricks, false urgency and scarcity and things, they make the copywriters lazier because they think the timer is going to do the job. It's like, no, like you said before, like get into their heads and make them feel heard. I love what you said about inviting people to these conversations and literally just sort of surveying them, and you have nothing to sell. And then going back, they are good prospects because they feel heard, because that was the point of you asking them questions, was to hear them. And just being heard alone is super powerful for people.
Goes a long way.
Yeah. One other great Dean Jackson quote, what you were saying before about timing is there's two kinds of buyers, right now and not right now.
Pretty simple, right?
You know what I mean? It's like, just because they're not ready now doesn't mean you shouldn't continue compelling them to join you at some other time. Yeah. Great stuff, Jason, man. This was really good. You're brilliant. Where do people go get pieces of you and your information in their life? jasonvanorden.com/awareness.
Yeah. So that's a link that I've prepared where, if you'd like a visual of those 5 things we talked about with a description of each of them as a refresher. So I said, hey, one of the most powerful things you can do is go find the gaps. This will help you do that. So jasonvanorden.com/assessment. Just enter your email. That'll send you the document, the diagram that you can use to assess your own messaging right now. Find some of those gaps that you can fix. And I'd say that's a great place to start with anybody who resonated with what we talked about today.
Excellent. Great stuff, man. I'll make sure that is linked on the show notes. Appreciate you spending time with me today. Great show. Well, let's do it again soon.
Yeah. Thank you, Kevin.
Hey, don't forget your goodies. Head over to copychief.com/copychiefradio to get some great free stuff to help you put the things you hear on the show into action for your business. copychief.com/CCR.